Welcome to Toy-polloi.
Hello and welcome to another video from toy-polloi. Now, if you've been watching my channel for a while, you've seen me do a few Y-wing fixes for a vintage Star Wars Y-wing, and one of the most common problems you'll find if you're rebuilding or sort of trying to collect a vintage Y-wing is the rear struts. They're incredibly hard to find. When you do find them, they're really expensive, or more often than not you'll find them and they're broken. In front of me here are a few examples of struts in various states of disrepair and sort of damage. So this first one here, this is a pretty common problem. It's been bent and it's snapped, so really it looks like there's not a lot you can do with that, and it won't fit on the vehicle. It looks like it's pretty useless. This next one looks like it's a pretty nice condition rear strut. One end has the little tab on it, this other end, the little tab peg is broken off, so actually this strut won't hold in place because you need the rear little peg there to hold on the final bit of the engine blocks. So today we're going to look at how to repair these two very common problems with engine struts on Y-wings. And actually, if you look here behind at this last one, this is one that I've already fixed. You can see if you look closely that this one was broken there. This has now been repaired and reinforced, and also this little peg was snapped off. So this broken strut has now been put back together, and actually when it's on a Y-wing, even though it's slightly skewed and bent at the moment, it straightens up and looks really good. So today let's get these fixed and we can put them back onto a Y-wing. For this fix, you're going to need a few different things. First up, you're going to need a few different size drill bits. You're going to need a 1mm size drill bit and a 2mm size drill bit. I have a selection here, so it's always useful to have a good selection of drill bits when fixing toys. You're going to need a normal metal paper clip, and you're going to need this key little bit of Lego. Now this is a Lego antenna. It comes in a few different colours, but the most important colour for this fix, or the most useful colour, is the light grey version. As you can see here, this is a light grey antenna. If I get a broken bit of one of the struts and hold it next to it, you can see it's a pretty good colour match, and once that's used to fix it, you won't even notice it's there. So first thing to do really is the strut I'm going to fix first is this snapped one, and as you can see it's bent and looks a little bit odd. So first thing we've got to do is to straighten that up. So to straighten these bent struts, what you're going to need is a freshly boiled cup of water, and you just immerse the plastic in the boiled water, freshly boiled water, for 10 to 20 seconds. The plastic will soften enough that you can then start to shape it back to being a straight rod again. Do not try this without warming up the plastic, because this strut plastic is very brittle and you'll more than likely snap it again. So let's get that nice and warm. That's feeling pretty good. As you can see now, I can start to bend this back to shape just with my fingers. I've got a tea towel here just to dry the plastic off. We can get this starting to look more like a straight rear rod. As you can see already, that's starting to look much better. It cools down fairly quickly, so you may have to dunk this into the water a few times. Actually, that first bit's not too bad. This second one you can see is quite bowed. Just warm that up. And again, we can now start to shape this back. And there you can see that's now not too bad. These rods are never perfectly straight, but as long as you can get it sort of straight enough, I think that should do. The next bit of this fix can be a little bit tricky and requires a very steady hand, because what we're going to have to do is drill a small hole down the broken end of this strut and down the other end as well, so that the two holes line up, and then we can use a small bit of paper clip and insert it into the holes to give it some strength, and then glue the two bits back together. So it is a fairly fiddly job. So the first thing I try to do on this is get a knife and then mark where I want to drill the hole, just to do a little indent so that I know exactly where I want the hole to go, just like so. Then I do the same on the other bit, trying to line them up so that they are exactly in the same spot. So this is just a little bit tricky, and it doesn't matter if it's slightly off, but obviously the closer it is, the better the fit will be. So I just mark that like so. Then we need to use a very small drill bit, which is why I said you need a pack of drill bits. I'm going to be using a 1mm drill bit, as you can see here. This is the drill bit. It's pretty thin, but it does match the thickness of the paperclip metal. So we're now going to drill a hole into both ends of this broken strut. Now that I've got the two holes drilled, I'm just going to cut a small bit of paperclip. It's got some wire cutters here. So what I need to do is push the paperclip in just to work out roughly how long and far that goes in. So it goes in about that far on that one, and a similar distance on that one. So that gives me an idea of how long I need to cut the paperclip piece. So it's about 1.5 centimeters. You don't need it particularly long. It's just enough to sort of reinforce this sort of broken section once it's glued, so that everything is held in place. So I can just insert that in there, and should be able to insert that in the other end, like so. And you'll see that they line up pretty reasonably. Sometimes getting them to line up is a little bit awkward, and you might need to modify the holes slightly. I think I might just modify that just a little bit, but that's not a bad starting point. And drilling such fine holes, it is pretty sort of hard work, so you do have to just take it a little bit slow. With a little bit more careful drilling, I've managed to sort of modify the holes enough that I can now line these two sections up pretty closely. They're slightly off still, but I think they should do. It actually looks like this strut has been glued at some point anyway. There's a bit of glued residue on there, but I think that should do. So now we can go and glue this together. I'm just going to use super glue to do this. It seems to work pretty reasonably because you're gluing the two sections together and the rod in place. So what you've got to do is, I'm going to leave the little metal bit in one end, just dab a bit of super glue on it, push it into the other side, and hopefully pull out the other side, and do the same, put a bit of glue on that, and a bit of glue on the ends. You've got to do this quite quickly, like so, and I can hold the two pieces together and line everything up and push it all so that it should all line quite nicely, and the super glue glows off quite quickly under pressure, so just push that into place. And I'm going to use a cotton bud just to soak up any excess glue that's around the edges, like so. And that looks like it's glued pretty well, so we'll just let that dry fully, and that should be quite a nicely repaired stick. The little pin inside it, the bit of paper clip, gives it enough strength that it's not going to snap easily, and so that should hold pretty well. With the missing end pin, as you can see here on this strut, we're going to use a slightly different technique, although some bits will be quite similar. Really, the first thing to do is we've got to find a replacement bit of plastic for this, and that's where the Lego piece comes in. Now this is a Lego antenna, as I showed you, the colour matches pretty well, and what we're going to do is we're going to use the fat end of the antenna and the little peg bit to sort of replace this whole section. So we're going to cut the Lego piece down, so we've just got a little bit of the thin section, and we'll leave the full section on for the moment. Then we're going to drill a hole into the end of the strut and insert the tiny sort of thin bit of Lego in there, so that's got a nice good area to glue onto. And then we can trim down the end of the Lego strut and make it the same size as the pin would have been originally. So first thing we've got to do is to drill a hole in the end of this. Now make sure that the broken end is nice and flat, because it makes it an easier thing to glue onto. And again, I think this is the plastic on the Lego is actually 2mm in diameter, and there's just enough space for that to be drilled in the end, but I tend to drill a small hole first. So I'm going to drill a 1mm hole first and then enlarge that up to 2mm, so we can use the same technique for drilling that hole. I'm just going to make a small mark with a penknife, press that into the end so I know exactly where the centre is and where to drill into, and I'm going to drill in with the 1mm drill bit, probably about sort of 5mm into the little gap, and then we'll drill in again with the 2mm drill bit. Now you can see there is a 2mm hole drilled in the end of this strut, so what we've got to do is take this Lego piece and I'm going to trim it down. I only need a little bit of this sort of bit sticking out the back. This is just a way of attaching it into the strut, so if I just trim that off, then we can offer it up and see if, it depends how far I've drilled the hole in to how deep this will go. As you can see, that's pretty good there. So what I can do is now glue this in place. I'm just going to use, again, a little bit of super glue. I find this works perfectly well. I'm going to put a little dab on the hole that I drilled, like so, and then push this piece of Lego in place. That seems to fit pretty firmly. So we just let that dry and then we can trim it so that it's the right length to what an original strut peg should look like. Now that the glue has had time to set, I can now trim this peg down so that it matches the original length. So on the left here we have an original peg and this is the replacement one with the Lego bit. So I'm just going to trim this down so that it's about the right length, like so. So just trim that with some plastic cutters. And then I've got a small file here and I'll just file down the edges of that so that it's a little bit rounded and should then fit in the engine block hole quite nicely. So now I have 3 struts that were all damaged in some way. They're back and ready for action. This strut here was actually a pretty reasonable strut, it just had the end little tab missing, so I've replaced that one. This one was snapped in the middle, so that's been glued and pinned to make it extra strong. And then this final one here at the back was also snapped at the back and had the end sort of tab missing, so that's been replaced. So they all look pretty good now. I'm going to put them back on my wiring and then we'll see if they hold. And here we have the finished article. As you can see, I've now got all 8 struts on this wiring. This is something I've been rebuilding for a very long time, just because I couldn't find the struts. It's been taking me a long time to find them. So even these broken ones, you can see that's one of the ones I've repaired. There's a slight difference in the shape of it, but it actually holds in place. And this engine here is one that has had most of the pegs replaced at the end to hold it in place, and it holds in well. This one over here has got a few cracked struts on it as well, but all repaired using a paper clip and a very fine bit of drilling. So it all looks really nice. There are other ways, of course, to do this. If you want to check out my other video on replacing all of these struts with custom handmade ones out of Connect rods, then check that out, because that actually, I actually think I prefer those rods because they're slightly thicker and a bit more sturdy than these. These are terribly brittle, these old rods, so the Connect version works well. And check out some of my other videos on other restorations that I've done over the past couple of years. So hope that's been of interest to you, and thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching Toy-Polloi. Subscribe for more great videos. You can also follow Toy-Polloi on Twitter and Facebook.